I want to go ahead and call this meeting to order for the Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks budget. Would like to acknowledge my good chairman from the House for coming over here and spending some time with us today. So thank you, sir, for coming over. You're always welcome to do anything or to work with me in any way you can. Appreciate it. Commissioner, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to you and let you give us your budget presentation.
Here we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First thing I'd like to do, if it's okay, is introduce some of the folks I brought with me here today. From our Law Enforcement Bureau, we have Colonel Carter, and he's our Colonel, and Lieutenant Colonel Scotty Jones, and Randy Taylor and Michelle Carter, who had worked with the department before and recently been with the foundation, who has joined us to be working with the legislature again here this year. And of course, Brian Ferguson, and we have Josh Castor with us this morning. I believe that's all the people we brought, and we do appreciate the opportunity to appear before the committee and share our budget request with you. And we, same as you, we do appreciate the House Chairman coming over to listen to it, our budget again. And I'm glad he did, because I've actually changed some stuff since the presentation we had over there. But what we'd like to begin with, just briefly, y'all have been kind to us over the last few years. You've entrusted us with a lot of money. We feel like we've spent it very appropriately and in a manner that you would want us to spend it, and accomplishing some of the goals that you want us to accomplish. The last year's general fund appropriation was 9.8, consists of about 400,000. Start off has been that number for a number of years for CWD funding. We had 101 samples turned in that were positive this year so far. Gives us a total of 308 since CWD got started here, and it's in 14 different counties now. As you can see, we're getting most of our samples, like 86% of the samples we're getting are come from taxidermists that we pay $10 a piece to collect these samples for us. And that's been the most productive way we've been able to get these CWD samples, which are so important to try to get a handle on watching this disease. You give us $2.2 million last year for the museum operations for 47 full-time employees, and $7.2 million for funds to support the salaries of 110 full-time employees in parks. And even though we're doing a lot more work in parks, the number of employees remains basically the same. It's an in and out type situation. When we hire one, we seem to have one find a better calling or whatever the case may be, and it changes up pretty handily. Next, briefly, just a little bit about the capital expense money you've been providing us along with ARPA. We spent that money to a total of right at $60 million over the last 3 years, just about wrapping up about 5 state parks with total renovations. Hope to have the last 3 of them online in the first group by hopefully no later than October, and bring those back in online. That's Percy Quinn, Natchez, Paul B. Johnson, Roosevelt, and Clarko. And we have several of them lined up, Brian, to get to the ones we're going to be moving into. That's kind of a South Mississippi deal. We're moving up to North Mississippi next year and going to start working on some of those next year. But a lot of new renovated cabins, a lot of new renovated camp pads, even have a fully Wi-Fi state park down in your part of the world, Mr. Chairman, there at Buccaneer, and been really well received by the customers there. And we've also been able to take some of the capital expense money for the first time in 20 years. We've put some new vehicles in the parks. With a total of the special funds we receive, it's partially state, partially federal. Around 78 million was in our budget last year. And in one note there, I'd just like to share with you that according to the Department of Commerce and Outdoor Recreation, the added value of shooting sports, hunting, and parks in Mississippi is 13.5 billion. That's total. And of that, the hunting, shooting, sports, and parks represents about $4.5 billion of that 13.5 total outdoor recreation in the state of Mississippi. So we play a big part of that. That's kind of what the money that you gave us over the last few years, that's how we've tried to spend the money there. And that you have a copy of those figures. And then you also have another handout We already passed out the park handout. Okay, you have your park handout here. This is the spreadsheet of where we started, where we're at now. That's through today's date, and that's how we spent your money in parks there. And what I was going to do now is let Brian take over and kind of tell you where we're going to go, and I'm going to help him as we get to certain areas, but let him kind of take over and start with our 25 funding request, which is really why we're here today.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Just want to go through the request. We talked a little bit about what we've done with park funding from the previous year. So I kind of wanted to start off with some of those state support funds, capital expense fund particularly. This year, what we want to do is move into the north part of Mississippi, Wall-Doxie, Tish, Lake Lowndes, JP Coleman, and then we want to go to Lake Lamar Bruce, but we also want to do Neshoba County Spillway repair as well. The total request for that is $15 million, and those funds will break out. We actually already have plans created and developed for both Wall-Doxie, LaFleurs, and JP Coleman, and we'll be looking to do some actual planning for the rest of the parks this year as well. So that $15 million request is for that. The Natural Science Museum request of $1.5 million. I want to briefly explain what this request is for. What we've done is we've done some work with some surrounding states to identify kind of what type of exhibits go there and where our citizens go. We got a lot of people leaving Mississippi to go to those exhibits in Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama particularly. And what our museum doesn't have is the capability to bring those those exhibits in, particularly because of the design of the entryways and different things of the museum. So it's not a matter of if we can get them, it's a matter of them being able to fit the exhibits through the front door. So we already invested about $3 million of our funding to fix some of those entryways and fix that front entrance area. If you go over to the park, you see the front entrance. Actually, the gate going into there has changed. A lot of that's changed. This $1.5 million will actually help us expand those entryways so we can literally fit these exhibits through the front door. And we believe that a lot of people will actually stop traveling outside of the state to go to those museum exhibits, and we'll be able to get those exhibits in-house. The EE funds is a one that we've gotten for the last 3 years. That's an enhancement program that we've used to train teachers and others. Moving down from there, if we don't have any questions on the state support funds, I'll move to our general fund request. All right, the first one is the CWD request at $400,000. It's been in our appropriation for the last several years. We've used that and all of that funds to combat chronic wasting disease. The next one is a new request. We've done a lot so far in marketing efforts, particularly with our parks and museums. You may have noticed some of our marketing campaigns, but we also want to work with tourism on expanding what our promotions look like. And what we've done so far is really, really helped develop the real marketing staff at the agency. And it's resulted in a lot of revenue coming back to our agency. The salaries for parks, this is a standard request that we had the previous years. Of course, with the implementation of SEC2 and new salaries, that those increases in pay have resulted in, of course, a higher need for salaries. This is just to pay for the employees that we currently have in the pen count that we have. That's $6.1 million. Same thing for salaries for museums. Those are about 47 employees. And that $3.1 million request is for those current employees. Our next request is new, and I'll let Director Posey start with some of the discussions on that for law enforcement.
Okay, yeah, so this is a big request we've got here, and I want to try to explain this thing as best I can and try to get any questions. Initially, we talked to the House Appropriations Committee about the problem we're running into. As you know, a lot of our law enforcement activities now center around a lot of non-conservation law enforcement activities. It's not a day goes by that we're not in a county assisting the sheriff with a lost person or assisting someone that's maybe have a drowning of things of that nature, that we have, our officers are well-trained. They go through 24 weeks of school, and they get a lot of requests to come assist local law enforcement. And we've been doing that, but we're getting dangerously close to, a lot of the money we receive, for some of the money we receive from law enforcement is Pittman Robinson dollars, and they don't allow us a lot of leeway when it comes to non-conservation type law enforcement. All that money is supposed to be sent on conservation officers. And that's pretty much what I said in the House Appropriations Committee. And then after that, I didn't feel good about it then, but after that, I had a chance meeting with the Lieutenant Governor about our request. And he kind of asked me some questions that I didn't have good answers to. And we, as a group that work on the budget, went back and kind of rethought the budget and how we wanted to come talk to y'all about what our actual needs are. And a lot of what we do have Pittman Robertson issues about non-law enforcement, non-conservation officer money dollars going to conservation deals, but also what has really happened over the last several years, of course, and it's inflated more this time because y'all were kind enough to give a lot of raises to everyone in the agency and statewide, but also to our law enforcement, which has really jumped up. Law enforcement salary has jumped up between $2 and $3 million as far as the increases that was given there. And what that's done is basically we're at a point in time with this budget is that the total money that we get basically from we get three sources of revenue. We are really two: license dollars and off-road motor fuel tax. That's what we get for law enforcement. And it's a total now of about
27.5 million.
20. No, that's a budget.
The total
revenue is 27, and the budget is going to be around 34, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're running. That's the only source of revenue we have to fund law enforcement. So basically, the question that Lieutenant Governor asked me that I wasn't happy having an answer for, we back relooked at this budget about how to answer it, is we said, if you didn't need 7.1 million last year, why do you need 7.1 million this year? And the answer is quite simply is over the last few years, there's been a lot of park dollars has had to be used to support the agency. And I felt like you didn't want us out here spending the millions of dollars that we're spending into in our parks and not keeping those parks well maintained. So we feel like it's time to look at a general fund request to help fund law enforcement. So we're not having to take money out of parks to help fund law enforcement and the rest of the agency. So that's, Brian may have something he wanted to add, but I want to be as straight as I could be with you on where we're at and what we're asking for and why we're asking for it. And that's our request still remains at 7.1 for law enforcement salaries. We've never had a general fund, never had any general fund money over the years for law enforcement. And we think it's time with the limited amount of funding that we do have and the expenses that we have, that would be the amount of money it would take to offset that, leave everything in place for parks. And with that, I'll let Brian add anything to it, or we have to try to answer any questions y'all might have.
Right, one question, or give me 1 second. Any members of the committee have a question? No, you go ahead. I got it. No, I'm actually going to hold mine for a little bit of time. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kincaid, would you like to? Do you have any questions?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Again, thanks, sir, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us to be here today. I will say this. I heard loud and clear the edict from the dome 3 years ago about the condition of our parks and what we needed to do to address these parks, get those back in working condition. And we took that very seriously. We heard that from both the House and the Senate, what we needed to do to address that. We took a positive approach to a 3-phase plan. We used the appropriation that we got and leveraged that money to the maximum ability and put this plan into place. This plan is working. This plan is an effective plan, and our parks, in my opinion, are on the way back. We've got a lot of work to do. our revenue generating parks are now operating in peak condition. Buccaneers is our shining star. It's an example that other states can use, and it lays the groundwork for the rest of our parks. So our team has really constructed a plan to move forward. I say that to say that when you have the money that we put into these parks, you obviously have to evaluate your personnel. You don't want to build a nice car and not have anybody to drive it. We've had to assess our personnel and find a better qualified staff. Keep those people working, and we've done that. Security has been a big issue. When we use our personnel for conservation needs for county support, and that's basically what you're saying, then that revenue eats into our law enforcement budget. And so all of these are just little issues that eat into this overall budget. So long story short, it's not a clean line. I wish it was. It's just not a clean line. Even so far as down to the Museum of Natural Science, there are these beautiful, beautiful exhibits that come through our city that we can't house. And it's a shame when they travel to the coast, we can't get them here because we can't fit them in our door. So we have a plan for that. So I applaud the team that constructed this request, and we have a positive plan moving forward. Thank you.
Any other members of the committee? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I've been looking at this year is with each agency, your progression money that you received last year, what was your plan as far as spreading that out among your agency? Did you spread it equally among them, or did you try to assist in another way of spreading it out? Or can you tell us off the top of your head?
Progression.
You received a certain amount of progression money
For salaries.
last year. So, and you were given the discretion on how you want to spread it out.
I think we just basically spread it evenly.
Okay.
Be pretty much
Right.
statement.
Well, and if you're talking about dollars, we received roughly over $350,000 in progression dollars that we did a 3% increase across the agency for. But that was much less than
I'm not saying it was enough. I just want to know what agencies are doing with it, because
Yes.
not every agency did that.
No, we spread it. We did a 3% across the board to every employee in the agency.
Okay. Additionally, I look at your priorities on your packets that you submitted, and I do see advertising as being one of your largest priorities and one of your programs there. And that's on your support services. So do you feel like we are at a point with our parks that we need to be doing the huge push to bring them there? Or are we going to bring people there and they're still going to be disappointed in some of these parks? Because I know you've done a good job in some, but before we go, when we spend, $350,000 to $500,000 on advertising, are we there for a product? Or are we going to bring them there and have them disappointed?
Well, we'll have 5 of them totally finished by October, which
Okay.
kind of starts the camping season, and moving them on North Mississippi. And there's been some projects, some money spent in some of the other parks. It's not like we've gone in there and finished them, but we've spent some money there. But the advertising budget is not only just for parks. We're working real closely with marketing and the tourism agency over on parks. But, we've also got a great fishing lakes up in North Mississippi, the coast, facilities we have down there. And it's not all together for just parks. So it's WMAs and draw hunters in and everything else. So,
Right. Well, and I understand that totally. It's just, we don't want people to come in and we're only halfway there. We've got to start that push. As a state, we need to be doing that push, to be honest with you, not just among our wildlife, fisheries, and parks. My next question would be, so what is our current law enforcement officer coming in, fresh out of the academy? What are we looking at their starting salaries at?
We're in the process of trying to recruit probably up to 30 people right now. I think the recruiting closes sometime next week. We hope to recruit around maybe 30. We hope to graduate 20 of them. We never graduate the full amount. But when those guys go in and sign up as a cadet, they start at $37,000.
37.
When they come out as a private or corporal, I believe they jumped to $41,000, almost $42,000 there. And then it's and that's with the raises that they got this last go round. I got it here, and I can tell you, cadet 37, 454, 55, private 41-2, corporal 45-3, sergeant 49-8, master sergeant 54. Starting salary.
And, and we're asking these guys and gals to go in the middle of the night among the woods with nothing but a small flashlight and their own personal weapons or their service revolvers, whatever it may be, and confront individuals who are substantially more dangerous as they have larger weapons. So I don't know if I would do it for $37,000, Mr. Chairman, but I do think that's something we do need to look at there. So how many are we down currently as far as staffing your law enforcement right now?
For the last 10 years, we've averaged around somewhere around 175 to 180 officers. Because some of them, as soon as we can get quite honestly, as soon as we can get these new guys hired, and these guys don't think about retirement, they don't think about insurance, they won't know how many dollars they bring at home. Somebody told me the other day that a one-bedroom apartment now costs around $1,300. That's what these new guys look for. So as a result, when we get someone in, spend 24 weeks training them and a ton of money, when they get an offer for more dollars down the road with a couple of years, they jump ship on us, except the ones who are really dedicated to want to be conservation officers. About 225 would be an ideal amount of officers for us to have. Right, currently we have some counties that don't have officers. Some of them only have one officer. So we'd like to have 2 in each county, and that would give us an administrative staff to go along with.
But you're saying that you're around 175 to 180 right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and ideally you'd like to be at 225.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think that'll take care of me for now.
Right. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the condition of Arca Butler Lake now, are we keeping the same amount of officers there?
Of course, Arca Butler is a core lake.
Right.
But we have the same amount of officers, I think, assigned to that area. I don't think we brought in anybody special at this point in time. I understand over the weekend they've had maybe some additional concerns there with the
dam
even
collapsing.
though the water is as low as it could possibly be pretty much right now, as I understand it.
And they said that it's probably going to be 10 years before it comes back. So will we keep the same amount of officers in that area, or we move some?
Well, we don't assign them to specific areas. We just kind of really assign them to geographic areas, primarily counties. So, we try to be available, even if it's not a officer available in that county, we will pull from another county as well. So I would just say this: if you think we need some additional enforcement there, we're always glad to try to provide it.
I guess what I was getting at was, do we need the same amount since nobody can get in there and fish? I mean, it's dry.
I don't think we'll be doing we probably won't be doing any fishing enforcement, but I mean, the other law enforcement parts of it go on as far as hunting season, things of that nature. So we wouldn't reassign an officer just because there's no fishing going on in that lake.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Commissioner, I've had your budget since I want to say 22, not 21 or 22, something like that. I think that you had already planned your park renovation schedule. That's very similar to this. And I have one that's very similar to this from last year. And I'm glad to have this update. I keep all of those, and I like to see the progression that we're making. And then also any changes that have been made with respect to cost. I like to look at those numbers and see where that comes from. But initially, my concern is that I wanted to make sure that every dollar that we invested, that we were expecting a return out of that dollar, or that we were looking for investments in upgrades that will yield a return with a higher revenue number for that particular park. And I don't know if you look at individual parks as their own business case. But that's how I would look at it. And I'm just going to use the one that I frequent the most, which is Paul B. Johnson, for camping purposes. I love going over to Buccaneer. I ride my bike through there all the time, and it's a great park. But I camp a lot at Paul B. Johnson, and I see we're going to spend $3.6 million total. And I guess I want to be very clear. It's not a guess. I want to make sure that when we turn that park back on, that we're doing it in a way that we're going to be able to recapture some or a vast majority of this money, and to see that it's going to stand on its own, or at least that it's in a position to stand on its own. And I'm going to watch what happens with Paul B, and I'm going to try to apply that same logic to every single park. And I know that there were some deferred maintenance issues that, quite frankly, with respect to infrastructure, you're not going to be able to make up 100% of that. But as far as a steward of the taxpayer dollar, I want to make sure that every dollar that we do is going to go to something that's going to benefit the revenue model and the stability and the sustainability for that individual park and its employees. So as these will come back online, I'm going to be watching the revenue numbers to see where they are. And then I would also like to know what your thoughts are with respect to the rates that you charge within these parks, the renovated parks, as or maybe I should say prior to renovation, and then show what your investment's going to be through the improvements, and then what your anticipated increase that you will be able to see because of the investments that have been made. And as, again, someone who RVs quite a bit, the best value in the entire state is our state parks value. And there are a lot of people that unfortunately take advantage of that. And I think that there's a part of me that wants to make sure that we're not giving away that value, and that we're not violating the Constitution, and that we are getting a fair market value for it. I would love to have a discount for Mississippians, for taxpayers who go and visit the locations. But I know that there are parks on the coast where I'm charged $100 a night or better for amenities that do not touch what they have at Buccaneer. And I don't know what the Buccaneer rack rate is or the nightly rate, but I know that that's an extreme value, because I have people that tell me they try to book it for months at a time. And I know that you've put measures into place to prevent snowbirds from living in there full time and bouncing from site to site. But I would like to look at that revenue model to make sure that we are collecting it, so that we can decrease the dependency on general fund dollars as we move forward in the future.
Well, we thank you for your comments, and we have tried to develop a business plan for every park that we have, and try to adhere to that business plan going forward. And certainly we want to do our best to make sure we're getting a return on the dollar. But as you mentioned, we have to walk a fine line between what folks can afford and what we can actually, afford to charge them, type deal there. So we are monitoring that. We feel good about the plans that we have in place. I think, we would, at this point in time, and Brian may want to address this, but our plan would be to kind of get everything in place and then see what kind of, if there's any adjustments need to be made as we bring these newer parks online. But we have already made some pretty good adjustments to prices in the parks.
Yeah, I understand. And I appreciate that additional input later. Commissioner. Chairman Barnett.
Don't do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, like Senator Delano, I'm sorry, Chairman Delano, one of my favorite is to frequent is Lake Claude Bennett, Paulden area, and some other ones around them. But what I've noticed is that a lot of them have gotten to the point to where they're almost to where we have to start over on that. And as I'm looking through some of these here, like that one, and for instance, I don't even see it on the list of something that, something that you're
Which one did you say, Senator?
Claude Bennett.
Oh, Bennett.
But there are other ones that are like that. I mean, that to me have gotten so far. I think it's a state lake.
It's state lake, Claude Benson.
Yeah, state lake. But some of those places like that, I think we've let them get too far to where it's going to take us forever to rebuild some of those places. So my question is, going forward, do y'all have any plans so that we can start to work on some of those lakes so that it doesn't cost us a fortune in the future? Because when I don't see any monies being spent on them, I don't see anything being put into them, and I'm not seeing any of those things happening at some of these places.
Well, the state lakes as a general rule, and we have to have, major operation, one of those, we have to ask for it in capital expense money. And like this time, we were asking for some to repair a spillway at a lake and then to improve the campground in the lake. So we can do whatever you want us to do, but we don't have any monies available for state lakes like we do the state parks right now. It would just strictly be a capital expense request to do something in a particular state lake.
Well, it's not just that particular state lake.
Allow me to address that question, because I couldn't agree with you more. That's something that we talk about constantly, is that our focus has been so dialed in and dialed down on state parks. But I don't want to forget about state lakes, because that is the local community's place to go. And so you'll find in their budget, there's been a couple of requests this year, and I've got probably 4 other state lakes that I want to get to. But again, it's going to be like our state parks. It's going to be a plan of how many can we do each year. But you're right, state lakes are a community treasure, and they're not state parks. They don't have the multiple campgrounds. They don't have the build out amenities that state parks do. But it doesn't matter. It's what communities depend on for their local recreation.
Well, I just know that it's not just a state lake for a lot of people. They have campground and they have pads, but
It's an economic center for that community.
but the fact of it, but it's like it's been neglected for forever, and it's just going down. And when you go and talk to a lot of people, they get to see that, and it discourages them from coming into the community and spending money in the community, and then spending money at the state lake. So again, my question is, when are we going to have some concern, or when are we going to start to look at those as well?
Well, I would think that this year, for instance, Lake Lamar Bros has been on my list for a couple of years, because it's such an amenity to that area, and it's used so much. And it's but that's just one lake. Tipper Lake, certainly another one that's on the radar. But there's an abundance of state lakes that need to be addressed. But I can assure you that state lakes are every bit on my priority as a House chairman as the state parks are. It's just we have to address that with a different pile of money. We have to address them differently. But I think that's every much as important as the state parks are.
All right. Go ahead. Yeah. I was getting ready to ask about the ARPA. Is that what you're?
Ask more.
Go ahead.
Can you update the committee on the FY24 request for spending authority?
I think that's what we try to do at the beginning of it. You mean to discuss what we did with those?
No, the grant that y'all received from Outdoor Stewardship.
Okay.
Y'all need spending authority.
You're right. So on FY24, what happened was Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund's a great opportunity for us. The issue that we have is with spending the money. Right now in our appropriation, we don't have the language in our appropriation to escalate our budget authority, so that when we do win those grant dollars, we need to be able to spend those. Last year, what we had to do was come back to LBO and get them to do an adjustment for it, which I think we did a letter this year to address that. But in our upcoming appropriation, what we need in there is language to allow us to escalate our authority for those additional grants that come into the agency. The Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund being one, but there's several other grants that we do receive from private companies and those things that will allow us to actually spend those dollars when we receive them. So that's just a language change need.
Or when that's just, we need to add that into their spending authority bills.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be some legislation that any money awarded for outdoor stewardship grants, the agencies that receive those grants can escalate those funds.
Okay.
Potentially, so.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that I had regarding the outdoor stewardship program. How much has the agency received from in total? And if you could break it down by year, that would be good. I think they've had 2 years, or are they going through the second year right now?
One in the second year right now.
Okay, and they haven't awarded those
No,
or,
they should
or
be
provided
awarded
that list
this
yet.
month, next month sometime. Yeah, we received 7 awards the first year, totaling right about about $900,000, I believe. And of course, we got a lot of matching funds that will go with that, which will put a lot of big investment into every project. We'll probably at least double or triple the amount of money we receive from an outdoor stewardship fund for each project. Now, this year we have 14 requests in, and that's what they will let us know what will be funded sometime in March on those 14 requests.
Okay, I'm curious. I'm not expecting anybody to know this number. Do you know what the total amount of money that the stewardship fund had in it
First year
for
was 10.
appropriation?
Second year was 15. We're asking, I'm understanding there'll be legislation introduced for 20 this year, 20 million. So 10, 15, and 20.
And your agency has received 600 or 800,000?
The first year, yes, out of the, I guess that was out of the original amount.
I think there were a lot of legislators who were anticipating more of those dollars going towards public projects that would go through the agency, and especially for parks as well as lakes for recreational purposes. But that's not your budget, or that's not your deal. And we're here to talk about your budget. So I'll stay on point with that right now. So I'm going through and I'm looking at a couple of things. I need to know that with respect to ARPA, that you have obligated, or you will be able to obligate all of the dollars by the end of this calendar year, correct? It's calendar year for ARPA obligations.
We'll have those dollars obligated and spent, and we can spend more if you can find some extra ARPA funds.
Yeah, my local water infrastructure people are begging for those too. As far as completion goes, completion date is in the 26th, correct? End of 26th.
Yes,
And you'll be online with that. And I noticed that over on the left-hand side of this column, you've got a breakout of where your monies come from, including in round 2 or in phase 2. You've got ARPA money in there, and I believe in phase 3 also. No, just in phase 2. And that was a total of 28 million. What was the overall amount that you received to the agency for ARPA funds?
It was 37.5 million.
Okay, other than the parks, where else was that money spent?
All in parks. All in parks.
So some of it some of it went to the improvement plan, and then some of it went to other components of it.
So we had 2 different pots. We had the ARPA tourism, which was a total of 21 million, and we had the ARPA wastewater, which was a total of 14 million. So we did a wastewater and sewage and all those upgrades in parks with that, and then the rest went to campground infrastructure. Campground improvements.
Okay. What's the name of this? Did LaFleur's Bluff get sewer?
No, sir.
They're still.
The issue on the engineering side is the issue there.
I understand. Okay. That's such a incredible part. I just wish we had a place to dump. Okay. We're going to head count. you had requested a significant amount more than what you had over 24. Almost 70 or so, if I'm doing my math right here. LBR puts you at just under 4 less than last year. So I don't need it today, but let's have a conversation about pins and where you're going to go with that and where you would like for us to work towards. Okay.
Okay.
And then I know we have some other minor budgets or junior budgets that are other than your construction budget, like that admin and now the Museum of Natural Science and the other special projects. I'll work with you on that and make sure that we get the language corrected as necessary. Is there anything else that you have at this time? Anybody else from any other members? Chairman Kincaid, I'd like to thank you again for coming in and spending some time with us today. Appreciate the cooperation. Mr. Commissioner, thank you very much for everything that you do. You and your entire agency, people that work there, appreciate it. Yes. Are we live stream now? We are, correct? All right. I want to go ahead and call this subcommittee meeting to order. We'd like to thank the senators that came over and that are joining us today. I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Commissioner of Ag. Or you're a doctor, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm just commissioner. But
Well, very good to see you.
glad
Very
to
good
be
to see
back.
you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, senators, and appreciate what you do. With me today is our new, she's not new, but this is her first year to be doing this, but no stranger to you, Anna Stovall. And she's been a great help to us at the department. And we actually had a very good briefing before last week's House appropriation and then today. So hopefully we can get to the point of this budget request and answer whatever questions y'all may have. We brought for you, and we won't go over it, but this annual report, because the picture is worth 1,000 words. And we do a lot of different things that most people, and including some legislators, may not know that we do. We everything from consumer protection to hosting the largest rodeo east of the Mississippi River. And the Dixie National Rodeo, which is in town starting Friday, which are all invited to attend, it made the cut of the top 60 rodeos in America. It made the cut at the National Finals Rodeo held in December. Those contests, we're the only rodeo east of the Mississippi River in the top 60 rodeos in America. All of them are out west except the Dixie National right here on the state fairgrounds. And we're proud of that. Our request is for the purpose of funding all the different things that we do. So the information that Anna has given out, I'll just hit the high points to cut to the bottom line there. What we are asking is an increase, mostly special fund authority, not general fund dollars, but of $6.4 million over the fiscal year 24 budget. Our agency operates on about 2/3 special funds. That is to say, revenues that we generate ourselves. About 1/3 is general funds, and almost all of that general fund budget goes towards salaries. So on the first category there, that of that 6.4, 1.6 million is designated for the SEC2, what we estimated increases. But importantly, it includes 6 positions that we desperately need to have restored. They're consumer protection positions. Help me out here, Anna. The other ones are
A human resource generalist, a legal assistant, investigator.
Yeah.
And 3 consumer protection specialists.
So there's 3 consumer protection and then the other 3 that were mentioned. So, but all of that is just more or less until we get this SEC2 thing figured out to a fine art. We just kind of put a placeholder to estimate what the increases may be. Of course, that's subject to y'all's appropriations. When it comes to travel, it's not a lot of money, but we've been operating on a fraction of our pre-COVID travel budget since COVID. We did not receive and have not received our pre-COVID level travel budget since before COVID. So we're asking to restore that. It's not an increase, but actually to restore that 150,000, because it's gotten to the point that when we do have weights and measures and petroleum inspectors that are certified, there are national certifications that they have to get to stay certified. And we've had several that have had to actually pay out of pocket just out of their paycheck to go to these to do their job, to continue to do their job. So that's a restoration of travel funds. Contractual, that $2.2 million simply reflects the rising cost of doing business. That everything is so much more expensive, and including on the fairgrounds now that we operate. But every aspect of contractual has gone up, and that's a reflection of that. We're asking for a $270,000 increase over commodities. Again, that's just the cost of the things they've gotten. And then equipment, 1.1 million. That includes to complete this wireless project on the fairgrounds, a tractor. Our tractor at the Ag Museum is on its last leg and getting to the point it's not efficient to keep repairing it. laptop upgrades for our inspectors. Last year, y'all passed a law to ground all Chinese-made drones, and all the drones that we had turned out to have been Chinese procured or made, so they were all grounded, and we had to buy new ones for those. Hog traps to be replaced, and I mentioned the wireless project. And vehicles, y'all were gracious enough last year and gave us half of the funding to replace the out of date and getting to the point of unsafe vehicles that we had, and we're asking for the balance of that this year.
Your
Better. Okay, something came back on. Thank you.
It's must be a thermal sensor.
Okay.
It's all the hot air.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. There's a lot more where that came from. So when you break it down to percent, our general fund request is 15% over last year, and special fund authority is 30% over last year. We appreciate all the authority that we received in terms of budget, but frankly, things have gotten expensive, and we cannot do everything we need to do in light of these excess costs of today compared to years ago. And I would add, when you go to the second page there, this is specific for the fairgrounds. You see the bulk of their increased request, which totals nearly $2 million, is $1.3 million extra authority on contractual. And that's because of everything going up from dumpsters, propane costs, repairs that are not budgeted for. We're operating facilities that are 75 years old in some cases. Some are newer than that. The Trade Mart is new. All the others are very old and in various states of disrepair. And so we are always having to make repairs, and that eats into our contractual, and we need a little extra authority there. Supplies and so forth, tools and such. They do have some specific equipment needs that are mentioned: 40-foot scissor lift, outdoor forklift, that would be very helpful. And then I'll just give you one example: several roof repairs that have to be made. We routinely now are having to fix roofs for bullet holes that are dropping out of the sky. People are having parties, I don't know where, but they're shooting guns up in the air. And just last month, we had incurred $6,000 worth of rooftop damage to our new Trade Mart because of bullets falling out of the sky and knocking a hole. And when the mistletoe people were there, rain was pouring in because of that. So it's something we have to fix. And we don't have that, we don't have a pot of funding sitting around for that, which I should mention on the first page, that other than equipment, that's what that's for, other than equipment. We've not had an other than equipment section in our budget, Anna tells me, for a long time. I don't know how long, but that $100,000 would be for miscellaneous repairs, just as such as what we described. And the last thing I would mention is that, well, let's go to the livestock show. We have two separate sets of livestock shows. The first one is county livestock shows. That's flow through money that comes through the Department of Agriculture to every local county livestock show in Mississippi. So these young people, who are thousands of them on the fairgrounds right now, showing their cattle, and they had a swine show this weekend, goats and lambs. They get a check, a premium check, and the Department of Agriculture has, because of the growth of that program, we've actually had to subsidize that out of our budget. We're asking for an increase of $40,000 to help make up the slack. These checks are not large checks. You take a kid who's raised a steer, and I don't know how many hundreds, thousands of dollars they've spent on feed. They may get a premium check at a county show of $5 or $10. It's small amounts. But it's important, because if workforce development is the issue in Mississippi, and it is, there's no better workforce development program than our 4-H and FFA programs, which are in every county. And so the second one is the Dixie National Livestock Show, and that's the one that you're all familiar with right here, which is going on. And y'all, I think, have a legislative showdown stock show tonight. I hope you get to come, but we're asking for $430,383 extra authority from that. That is our request, and I'll be happy to, have I covered everything, Anna? I'll be happy to take any questions or additional information that you might need. We'll see what we can do.
Mr. Chairman, before we get into these serious questions, I do want to make sure that you're aware that this budget hearing is today for a reason. We've had problems with this legislative showdown over the past couple of years. The other end of the hall maybe have had a little bit of influence, and
Well,
I'm just saying my chairman across the way from you right there has done a lot of prep work for a show tonight, and
Well-
I think you're going to be pleased with it, and I know we're going to bring that trophy home tonight.
well, the good news is, Mr. Chairman, I don't judge those shows. We just have the facilities in which to conduct them. The Mississippi State Extension folks do a great job judging those shows. So yeah, they would be a great person to talk to. And
Well, I appreciate your
I'll make sure they
passing
know.
along the good word.
I will pass it along to those folks there right now.
It is time for the Senate to be recognized
Yeah.
for its abilities to handle goats.
We concur. Are they doing
We're
steers
doing beef?
tonight?
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Great.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Last year, the Sale of Champions, which is a private, and that's what hopefully this is all raising awareness of. I know y'all already know this, but the Sale of Junior Champions, these young people, this is the pinnacle of the livestock show in Mississippi. So they started back in the spring raising their animal. They came to the state fair spring, they came to the state fair. They are overwintering them, bringing them here, and then these market animals are being auctioned off. The Sale Champions Committee raises funds to reward them in excess of the premium that we just talked about. But last year we had an all-time record support for the Sale of Champions, and it was $456,000 that was raised, plus additional funds for scholarships for these young people. So when you think about youth development, future leaders, these are those kids, and they appreciate y'all's being there tonight and support.
Let me open it up to the committee first. Is there any questions that y'all have right now at this time?
Let me just start with my first general question, Mr. Chairman, that I've done for everybody else is of your progression money that you received last year, what was your plan and how did you distribute it among your employees?
Progression, you mean SEC?
Now, you received an amount last year, which was in theory for insurance increases, and you were given discretion on how you were going to give it to your employees. I don't remember how much was there. Was there 300,000 or so? I don't remember. So you received that last year, and the question is, how did you distribute it? Whether you distributed 3% across the board, or whether you did among all the different employees. We just want to know your plan and how you implemented that. Little wasn't much, but it was a little bit to know about.
Right. My recollection. Now, Joette was our budget person last year. She is not with us. She's at another agency now. But my recollection is for that little bit of money, it was across the board. You recall that? I believe that to be the case. So it was a small percentage across the board.
It was not a huge percentage, and we just wanted to know exactly what happened with your agency. Not all agencies did that, but we want to know your plan on that.
Yeah.
You've got some questions about maybe some inspectors. How are we doing on our requests for inspections? Are we getting those turned around rather quickly? Are we having any troubles getting, say, seed inspectors, grain inspectors, whatever it may be, out and about to get this done? Because being that Mississippi's ags are our number one industry here, that we want to be sure that gets done and turned around. So how are we doing on that, Commissioner?
Well, we routinely do our annual inspections. We have a rotation for those. So people are actually in districts. We hire them in districts. We have, from time to time, we have vacant positions that we have to catch up on. But by and large, those are done every year and actually is documented and stickered to that effect. So then if we ever have a special request for inspection, we dispatch them immediately. I had one this year. I had one, somebody called and said, hey, somebody had, I I don't know if they missed the route or what, but they weren't there when they came to do the inspections. Could you come back out? We sent them out that day and got it done. So we are responsive to that. We do the routine inspections, but we're very responsive, and our people will go immediately to as requested inspections.
All right, and you know that I'm very much. It's very important to me, a priority, to be sure that our statutory duties get taken care of, and that's one of them. As Commissioner of Agriculture, you're there to make sure that we don't get something that we don't need in our state. So that's where that question arises from, Commissioner. I'm gonna back off here a second. Let our other members take over for a second.
Thank you.
The other,
Thank you,
Chairman
Mr.
McClendon.
Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, I just wanted to tell you a thank you for coming up to Horn Lake. We had the rodeo up there this past year. It was a huge success.
Right.
And there were a lot of people that noticed that, hey, our ag commissioner was there. High school kids came from across the state on the Alabama state line. They were came from Grenada, Oxford, and it was a huge success. And your people were up there, and, you know, whenever travel comes about, that's part of the things, you know, that you're doing.
Thank you.
I wanted to make sure that was noticed. And also, can you comment anything about land owned by other entities outside of our country in the Delta? I know you had mentioned that.
I will. First of all, I want to say thank you for recognizing that rodeo. We actually held about 15 or 16 rodeos around the state last year, small rodeos. They're not at the level or caliber of the Dixie National, but we wanted to do that, working with private partners, of course, to get those kicked off and try to spur awareness of rodeo, the Western way of life, and also try to grow the Dixie National. We've already grown it. We've doubled the revenues that it's bringing in the last 5 years. We want to grow that some more. As to the other lands owned by other countries, it is a serious problem. The legislature, tasked us to have a committee, a study committee, study task force, and we did that. We had some very good panelists, some very good preparation, and some good report, a very lengthy report about the high levels of land owned by foreign interest in Mississippi. At the time we submitted our report to you, over 750,000 acres of agriculture land was documented by USDA as having been held by foreign interest. After we submitted it in December, USDA came out with a new report that, in fact, nearly 200,000 additional acres are owned by foreign interests. And so I think it highlights the urgency of this issue. I mean, selling our farmland to foreign countries is when we could be selling them our products, is like selling the goose that laid the golden egg. You can sell it one time and it's gone. And once you control it no longer, some other entity, agency, country is controlling it, and I'm deeply concerned about it. And my thoughts are included in that report as an exhibit in detail, and I'm highly concerned about it. And I am hopeful and optimistic that the legislature will tackle that critical issue for the future of Mississippi's food security and for the future of Mississippi agriculture. I'm looking forward to reading the legislation that may come this session.
And with that land goes water rights, correct?
That is correct. Water rights. There's also some information in our report on energy rights. We own, you know, natural resources are our most valuable resources. Our farmland is our most valuable asset. And every time we lose 1 acre, in my view, we are weakening our food security, and not only as a state, but as a country. And USDA has told me that these reports they publish, which nearly 1 million acres now owned by foreigners in Mississippi, those reports are not fully complete by admission of USDA, because they only have so many resources to review and document the land ownership that as it changes hands. And we get them once a year. We'll get another report next year. Hopefully we can stop the bleeding on that in 2024. Thank you for that question.
any other questions right now? Okay. Commissioner, I've got a little bit of hot air of my own.
Come on.
So as you know, couple of things. Just on this, in this spreadsheet, I just want to point out a little, an error down in special funds and federal funds for LBO recommendations. Those two numbers are transposed, so it throws off the deltas over on that right-handed column. You're asking for 16.7 million or 16.8 in special fund authority. I know that was something that we worked on last year to give you the ability to flex up. And that is a different request than what you're asking for on the fairgrounds side, as well as, I think it was on was it Dixie National as well?
Yeah, actually, both of those, the fairgrounds and Dixie National are special funds. The only general fund in those following sheets would be the county livestock shows. But fairgrounds and Dixie National are special funds. So they would be included in that request at 16.787 million.
Okay. And then last year, I had brought up some questions about the revenue that you were generating from the fairgrounds and during Dixie National. And I think there was some challenges of actually how do you tell that story in the context of how we do budgeting? I've thought about that a lot over the summer, and I mean, really true. I just went back to the business side of things. It's like I'm looking for a P&L for the operations that deal with both the fairgrounds and Dixie National, and then I want to see how that is intertwined, or how they mix into one another, cross-pollinate, or however that might look like, and then understand what relationship that has to your support budget, if at all, if any at all. And I'm wanting to track those numbers a little differently, or at least be able to look at them differently, because you've got, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we looked at some master plan work last year that was in the support budget, but it was for the fairgrounds itself, correct?
That is correct. There's a master plan for the fairgrounds that is strictly for renovations, repairs, and building infrastructure funds that we don't have. Yeah.
Okay, but that would be for the fairgrounds component, and not necessarily your support budget side, correct?
Right.
And I just wanted to show that a little differently. You generally speaking, you do not get general fund support for the fairgrounds unless we have some line item that comes in through capital expense or through the bond bill. And we made some upgrades 6 or 7 years ago to the Coliseum itself. I think you did some seating when the first couple of years that you were there. Were you able to draw some type of an ROI on those dollars that you invested in the Coliseum? And I know that you're challenged, just like we are on the coast, of dealing with a building that's 40 plus years old. And you're at end of life, maybe for the entire building, but you're doing everything that you can to extend that life and extend that revenue source. And I would like to help you with that effort as you go forward. But I just would like to know if you have a case history, or to show what you've invested in the Coliseum, and then what kind of revenues you've been able to generate because of those investments.
I understand your question, and I'm going to answer it. I don't have anything in writing here to answer it with, but let me begin by saying the fairgrounds pays for itself. Special funds revenue, by and large, the majority of its revenues is generated by the state fair in October. Some years it's 50%, some years it's 60%. The weather can impact it, as you know, in events. COVID impacted it. We made the decision to persevere. And so that year when when you decided to abolish the Fair Commission and put it under Department of Agriculture, and I supported that and asked for that authority, we started that year with a $3 million, as I recall, special fund fairgrounds revenue authority because nothing was going on. I mean, everything canceled. So we were in a building back mode. Before that, when I took office in 2018, we were building a brand new trademark, which the legislature fully approved. And it has, and I can tell you on the trademark, it's been a game changer. It is the most rented building on the fairgrounds. It is rented multiple events every day. I mean, 2 or 3 times a day, different events. And it is our generating source of building revenue. But at that time, the Coliseum, which you will recall, was in a state of disrepair. So I came here, and I think the request was about $2 million in 2018 to renovate the seating and upgrade it. We had to fix concrete holes in the floors where Coca-Cola had literally eaten holes through the concrete. We surfaced that and actually were able to make it match the new trademark. So it didn't stick out like a sore thumb as bad. That $2 million investment at the time, let's just take, we don't use the Coliseum very much for the state fair. It's primarily an outdoor event. We do have some concerts in there. We started doing that, selling tickets separately. But that's a recent development. But the Dixie National is our biggest revenue generator for the Coliseum. And when I took office, it was selling, $600,000 worth of tickets a year. That's ticket sales. I'm just giving you an example. And now we have doubled that to over $1.2 million. We've had over $1 million rodeos the last 3 years. So I think I can't tell you that's all the reason why, but I can tell you that building enhancement definitely enhanced the revenue generation. And now what it has done with the vision of then Commissioner Cindy Hyde-Smith is to combine that trademark with the Coliseum so you can have an event like the governor's inauguration or a giant wildlife and outdoor show under one roof that we did not have that capacity to do when we had the old trademark in a separate building. So yes, the Coliseum is rented as in additional ways for trade shows to go along with that trademark. But I think, definitely it has enhanced the attractiveness of the Coliseum for purposes of rentals and specifically for the rodeo itself.
Well, I would agree with you. We have 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure there's no other questions. But my last comment on that is that when you're dealing with a building that's 45 plus years old or however many years, you've got to start holding back money for the maintenance or for those system changeouts that you're going to have to do. And we don't see that in the information that we're provided. But we would like to see that there is provisions that are being made for that day when that chiller unit goes out for the second or third time, or whatever the case may be. But I want to look at that and I want to track that so that we can make a strong case for being able to help you in the future by the dollars that you're setting aside from revenue.
Yes, sir. We'll get you.
Any other questions? Again, we did not get into some of the other components of your strategic plan. There are some things that I want to work with you on. And I know that other members of the committee have expressed some interest in that, but I look forward to working with you on that.
Yes.
We'll continue to work together, and I appreciate everything you do for us.
Well, I thank you. And that strategic plan, as you know, we've rolled it out. We've talked about it 2 or 3 years now. Our livestock facilities that our youth are meeting at right now, they are 75, 76 years old today. They were not built to code. We had to keep a fire watch. Right now, there's a fire watch because of that. And my concern is a matter of safety for these youth. And I look forward to working with the legislature to get those upgrades made. And I thank you for your interest in that and sincerely mean it. Thank you for that. And thank you for your work.
And I want to work with you on your strategic plan, especially for the master plan for that entire redevelopment of that area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it,
it.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate you. Yeah. See y'all at the see you at the livestock. What's it called? Roundup. Yeah. Y'all good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Where is it? Oh, okay.
See you. Thank you very much. All right, good to see you. You doing all right, man? Good to see you. Thank you.
We are still live, correct? All right. Next up is the Animal Board of Health. Again, thank you, committee members, for being here, other senators. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you now and let you give your budget presentation. If you would, press that green light on that microphone. There you go.
Thank you, sir. Let me introduce, this is Dr. Hope Martin. She's our deputy state veterinarian that started in January. Our other one retired. And then Ms. Kim McCrory, she's our business. So, all right. Well, thank you all. And I have a packet on the, this is just our annual report for any of y'all that we're a small agency. A lot of people aren't sure exactly what we do. So I want to make sure and give a copy of that for y'all that shows our activities for last year. Our budget packet request is really the one on our letterhead that starts with some charts and graphs just to kind of give a quick background. Bird flu, avian influenza is what has been our nemesis. It's kind of like the tornadoes of the emergency management world. And so this map is just to show it's still going on. And in November, we had not an outbreak, but we had to respond to an outbreak in Alabama because they sent infected birds, pheasants and game birds into Mississippi. And we had to go into 5, if you look at the next page, we had to go into 5 game bird hunting preserves and destroy those birds because they had come from an infected premises in Alabama. And so we had to go through and do the cleaning and didn't recognize that segment of our industry in this state. And there's quite a bit of money involved in that endeavor. And those guys were losing anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per hunter per day. And we had to shut them down for a minimum of 2 weeks during the prime of hunting season. So rapid response is what we have to be able to do. And one of the issues that occurred was during that response, and also we sent a team to Alabama, they contracted with us. They had 2 outbreaks at the same time. And so one of our machines that's about 15 years old broke down, fatal. It's going to have to be replaced. And so we used or are using the emergency response fund that was established last year because without this, we're dead in the water. And so I put these pictures in there to just show what we're talking about. When we say an emergency response foaming trailer, it makes firefighting foam. It's used to humanely depopulate the birds. We built our first one 20 years ago for $15,000. Our next one that we replaced it with about 15 years ago for $35,000. Well, now the parts to make it ourselves is $90-something thousand, or we could buy it off the shelf for $140 or so. So we're buying the parts to build it ourselves, but without that, we're unable to do the response that we have to be able to do. So just to kind of, if anybody had questions about what that is and why we need that and considered it an emergency, because without that, and we're in the peak of high path AI season right now. So anyway, so with all that said, the next page is just the page out of the elbow, but basically that last sheet is really what I want to focus on very quickly, and for y'all that may have questions. So as you can see there, our total general funds request that we're asking for is the 182,064 over elbow, and that breaks out and then capital expense funds of 92 that we're asking to get placed back into that emergency response fund, because that capital expense fund, if it's supplies or personnel, USDA will reimburse us, and so we can reimburse that fund to a degree. But because this is a piece of equipment, USDA does not pay for that, and so that we're asking for that to be put back into the fund so we can have that 250 as we go into the year, and so that's the 92. The 182 is broken down in these next categories. We found out 2 weeks ago that because of continuing resolutions and things that USDA are going through, they are cutting our cooperative agreement funds by 10%, roughly 10%. We get about 600,000 a year from USDA to carry out these kind of activities. And so that 10% is going to be 60,000. And so for us to be able to respond to avian influenza and the other things, we're asking that lapse in federal dollars be funded by general funds. The next part of that 182 is salary progressions through the SEC squared. And then the last part is contractual services. We have quite a bit of increase in data entry and those kinds of administrative kind of fees, and we can do it much more cheaply with contractual services than hiring a person. And so that 48,267 is to use contracted individuals to fulfill those needs as needed and not have a full-time person on hand. And so that's what our requests are. And so now questions that I or Kim can answer specifics.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Dr. Watson, members of the committee, you have any questions? Tyler McCon.
Beating the dead
Senator.
horse here. My general question is, you received a small amount of money last year for progression of salaries. Your plan for those salaries was to spread it equally, or did you use some other method of distributing those funds?
Kim is our one that does
Thank
that.
you.
What we did was when we first went through this process, we didn't ask for enough money for all of our employees to be moved to market level, even though.
We're not even talking about going SEC. We're just talking about the brief. You received probably about 3% per employee last year. And that was essentially to help offset some of the cost of insurance increases and things like that. You were given discretion as to how you gave that to your employees. So my question is whether you did it equally across the board or whether you did something different.
We did something different.
Okay. Can you tell me what that plan was?
Yes, sir. Because we had a lot of employees that were very far from market value. Because all of our employees are long-term employees and they all would qualify for above the market. We would like to gradually move those employees to market. We have a handful of employees who are already at market and they did not receive increases.
So you applied those to those that were not at market. Is that what
Yes,
you're telling me?
Mhm.
Okay. We'll get Corbin to pull that data so we can look at your plan and how it was implemented. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're pulling that for every agency that we're looking at. But we want to give you an opportunity to give us an explanation on it.
We try to be fair and apply it equally, but at the same time, make sure they are employees that are meeting, their performance appraisals and things like that.
Any other questions? We have about 3 minutes or so left. I've got a comment. Anybody else real quick? If I remember correctly, about this time last year, we had an outbreak that occurred in central Mississippi in 2 birdhouses. And at that time, there was a question that I brought up about whether MEMA was involved or if there was a response that was coordinated through your office with MEMA, especially on the response side of things, seeing that you're limited in resources. I remember walking away from the conversation thinking that you'd had it handled, y'all had worked on it, and that there would be continued information that sharing. That was it. The purpose of that was to make sure that we were prepared for a much larger, wider spread outbreak. We are very fortunate, based on what I've heard from the north, from the upper Midwest, that we're not seeing nearly the breakout.
Well, it is there in the rest of the country. We've been very fortunate in the Southeast, so you're right. And so what we've done is we've worked with MEMA to have them prepared to step in. But because the response is a little bit different and USDA has different parameters, what our plan is to, as long as USDA, we can support and know that we're going to get reimbursed in a timely fashion. Because USDA structures things differently than FEMA. That's the way that we go, but we stay in continued conversations with FEMA. And if something were to get really huge, then they are available. But the training and the ability to do things is a little bit different. And so our goal has been to work with surrounding states. That's why we went to Alabama and use each other with contracts that can get reimbursed through USDA, but they're still our backup.
Okay, and regarding those events over in Alabama, were those done through mutual aid agreements where they reimbursed
No,
you?
because USDA has a test pilot of a similar product.
Mhm.
And so Alabama applied to get reimbursed. And so to reimburse us for example, we use.
Correct. They reimbursed you for your expenses, so
Yes.
you weren't dinged for a response
That's correct.
over in Alabama, correct?
That's
Okay, that would be similar to how we would do mutual aid.
It's similar to mutual aid, but USDA doesn't have that exact, but
I understand.
yes, sir, it's similar.
All right, any other questions? Anything else? Appreciate your time.
Thank you very
I'll get with you on your PIN numbers and well, it doesn't, we don't have a change in your PINs, but if there's anything that else that we need to add as far as language in your bill, I'll be certainly glad to look at that as well.
Yeah, the other thing, let me just mention real quickly, is the language, and I think we talked about it on before that Emily's aware of. We just want to make sure that that emergency response plan doesn't have to be asked for every year in order to be there, that it's constantly there and can be
As a trust fund,
as a trust fund. So,
very similar to the way so that's not swept. You're looking to make sure that it's not swept.
yes, sir.
Corbin, you got that? Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Dr. Watson, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all.
All right. It is 3:30. We are live. Thank the members of the committee that have hung around. And I know Tower will be coming back in just a few minutes. Director Mack, I'd like to thank you for coming here today. If you would turn your microphone on, turn it to the blue color, or so that it turns green. There you go. And we look forward to talking with you and listening to you about your budget hearing for this year. I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Oh, hit that green button.
I'm not used to having to push that button. All right, thanks, sir. I appreciate the opportunity just to come in and share what MEMA has been able to do this last year. What's been thrown in our well, so to speak, and then where we're headed in the future, and why our budget request is what it is. So I need to get him one. There we go. So in the last year, if you wonder what took place, we had two major federal declarations. One of the storms came through, of course, Rolling Fork went all the way up to Monroe. And then another one we had to get very, very crafty on. Jasper County and Jackson County got some individual assistance. And then we ended up not making a declaration at that point. So we had to go out there and scarf and find 20 other counties which had some public assistance needs and whatnot. And we were able to. On top of that, that's where Senator Barnett and myself, we were talking, and I do not have the final product for him yet, but at some point, when you have 21 severe storm disasters that affects a state in a year and only 2 get a federal declaration, what happened to the other 19? And I can tell you that there was no assistance from the federal government nor FEMA or MEMA at that point. And he and I, the well that I went into to look at a state program, reviewed 3 other states, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Alabama, and their programs, and the depth at which this well is. I do not have a final for him at this time, but we're digging into it to see what happened in those 19 disasters this last year, and how would that relate if we had some type of state program, not the 75-25 that the FEMA federal government does, but maybe a 50-50 or 60-40 or something of that type of nature. We've got some bridges in Franklin County right now that are destroyed, and we're not going to make a federal declaration off this last week, but the bridge is still gone. So how do we look at something like that? We have to look at a Fed aid road. Okay, that's federal government's got that one, state, and then local. And so I do think it's very, very appreciative on our part to be able to bring something to you to evaluate, to say this is something the state cannot do, or this is something the state can do. So I think that's I owed you that answer, and you called me when I was out getting my hip replacement. So that is my final answer on that one. And I'm sure you'll have questions for me coming up.
Yeah, but with respect to that, the 2 events that we've had this year or this past year, have those all been or both been on 75-25?
Yes, they've been also, they both had public assistance, and they both had individual assistance. And on our public assistance program, 75-25 match.
First 30 days, part of those categories
Yep.
was 100%.
Yes. On the one that hit Monroe and Rolling Fork, we were able to get like individual assistance 100%
for individual assistance, but not for public.
And public assistance
So
on debris removal.
debris removal.
Things like that. We got, it's almost like Katrina when you got the 100%.
Right.
This is one of those that you got 30 days, get it. And then we were able to save a good amount of money on that.
And again, those were reimbursements.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I just wanted to ask you about that real quick. I'll let you go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. And I've got numbers on those I can leave on both of those disasters to just kind of show if we need to. So I'm going to just rock and roll straight into the pamphlet we kind of handed out. And it looks at our 721 budget. By the way, I have Crystal Thompson. She's the CFO and the Chief Administrative Officer. Clayton French is the Deputy Director for the agency. And Summer Davis down there at the end, she works in the finance office as well. So if I can't answer the question, hopefully I've got the team here that can actually bring that up. So when you look at salaries, slight increase that we've asked for, we would like to increase some of those numbers that we currently have to the mid-level. And I know that y'all were gracious enough last year to not remove any of our pins because we were in response in 2 disasters. But I need to kind of explain to you where we are now. So we still have 31 vacancies in the agency that are open. We're only a 185 person agency. But to get to that number, you say, well, what have you been doing last year? Well, we advertised 76 positions. Out of those, brand new hires, never been at MEMA before, were 32. We were able to hire that many. And then we've got personnel that were promotions from within inside the agency, 41, but we lost 44 individuals last year during the middle of disaster response. And been able to promote those 41 is very significant to keep that historical data, all that experience in there. So it's not that we weren't trying to fill those positions. I'm sure you've heard it from other state agencies as well. They are hard to find. They are hen's teeth, and we are moving, getting very aggressive, and would not like to lose those. And when you look at that number, I know mine differs from LBO a little bit, but we also have about 4 to 5 individuals that are on military leave. Well, we didn't pay them for the last year and a half, but I still have to account for that salary. Whereas when they walk back in the door, I've got to pay them. So I think that's some of the calculations that I want to, Chris and I have talked about to get to LBO to say, hey, look, these are coming back, and I must employ these folks when they come back into the into the agency. So decrease in our general funds are contractual. As I go down that page, commodities. If you ask me what I want to save on this page, salaries, positions, the ability to do the things we want and need to do. This last disaster, FEMA brought 220 personnel. I sent 30 over there to win the war with them. I mean, I don't have the personnel to match them one-to-one or program, and they do bring a lot of things to do that we can't do. But to be able to maximize that, I've got to have the personnel that are over there. So that's the 721 budget, kind of in a nutshell. 722, call attention to as something that has come upon us from last year. Senate Bill 2853 was the drone bill. We were not exempted from that. So when it went into effect, there was a decision that had to be made at my level. Do we fly a drone that was made with maybe some Chinese parts and save somebody's life or not? There are agencies, there are folks that are not flying. I'm flying. I'm exempting at life safety. That's my personal exemption from being an ex-law enforcement officer. It's life safety. I'm not flying over a government building. I'm not flying over a prison. I'm doing that. So that's, if that bill continues, to replace that fleet is $521,000 just for MEMA. That's not the local fire department. That's not the sheriff's department. That's not others that are kind of hesitant and scared to fly. We've received more calls because they know I'm flying for life safety. So I think that's something I would ask that we could look at that again and maybe do some exemptions for first responders. That I don't know if any other agencies ask for that, but that's a significant amount of money to have to throw back in and still throw a bird that can fly and do what it needs to do. I'm fixing to take it out of service, give me end of life on it, because there's a certain point where they just can't fly. So that would be one of those. So I did talk about when you get to the next one, that's kind of a regurgitation of budget 721. The military packs that we've got out there, the 80% fill rate that we're at, we are handling it. We have gotten crafty with how we do our meetings, where we go in the state, but that's really going to have to be something that I'm losing more than I'm able to fill, but I'm still out there. We've got some new advertisement campaigns that we're going to do internally. Really putting a good job description on what we do versus the SPB job description. I think that's confusing sometimes when someone's applying for a job. The next page I want to talk about is disaster trust fund expenses. The state match, when we talk about these last 2 disasters and the others, state match public assistance projects in the counties and municipalities, 10 million. Reimbursable expenses from FEMA was 6 million. Our expenses to respond in everything that we do, payroll, ID, individual assistance, commodities, the things that we've got to be able to do there, that total was 20 million. Next is the City of Jackson water crisis, show you how we're handling those funds and how we're able to, on the left-hand side in the very small print is why I brought my reading glasses today. It talks about, how much bottled water, $3 million for bottled water, et cetera.
You have another one of these?
Oh, yes, I do. I think I do. Somebody down there's got one.
Disregard.
Leave it here just in case.
I apologize for interrupting.
No, sir. Absolutely. So our total obligated expenses for the city of Jackson, you start with the number one, we'll work across, was 10 million. Our state funds received out of House Bill 603 was 6.5. FEMA reimbursements as of January was 2.3 million. So what's left, expenses are waiting at FEMA for reimbursement at the CRC, the recovery centers, is 1.2. And on the left-hand side, it shows about $10 million worth of cost, what it took to run that disaster and respond for the city of Jackson for their water mission. COVID-19 is an update there. We still continue in that mission along with the Department of Health as they require our assistance. Total obligated expenses, 244 million. The CARES Act, 53 million went back to pay for some of that. And we've got 136 million from FEMA reimbursements as of January of 24. FEMA reimbursements projects they're setting in the queue for approval right now is about 22. So we're down to our new state COVID expenses are about 32 million, and that's dropped 26 million from last year. We have been able to wash out about 26 million of that through our reimbursement program that we've got coming up in this next year.
You expect, so I understand this correctly, you're expecting the state to spend $32 million this year or this upcoming fiscal year?
We've got 22 million in the queue. So if we can get those reimbursements and coming down, 32 million would be if we could close everything out to the end.
So basically what this shows her is the rest out of the 244 that we haven't been reimbursed for yet. That doesn't mean that we don't expect to be reimbursed for it. It's just the balance, we're actually able to get some back.
Okay.
But this is not closed out by any means, no. So we're still working on it.
Okay.
My mic back on. Severe weather, the event that Rolling Fork and Amory, where 5.4 million was obligated. State expenses, total federal expenses, 4 million. The total state expenses for the storm was 1.3. And if you look in the big block over here on the right-hand side, it shows you all those expenses that we have obligated so far. And if that last one we talked about a little bit earlier, the other needs assistance, that's where the 25% the state kicks in to help pay on that 75% of the other needs assistance that actually the feds bring in, FEMA does. So we're automatically on the hook for that.
So, sir, I kind of want to clarify. Last year, we were given 7 million just for the
Right.
storm, and this is that 7 million. So out of that 7, we have expended 5.4.
Okay. And then where's the balance of that? Where's the
Sit-
balance?
It's sitting in our disaster trust fund in a internal order for itself.
Okay.
To be used towards that,
To be used towards
the storm.
this storm event?
Yes, sir.
But what you're saying is that instead of, you expect this to be capped at 5.4. Is that what you're saying?
No, sir, that's how much we have spent for the storm. Actually, okay, well, that is confusing. 4 million was payback from the feds. Out of the 7, we've only spent 1.3 out of our state funds, if that makes sense.
And the $7 million was earmarked to that
To the
particular
storm,
event.
yes, sir. We got $7 million just for the storm for matching and for expenses. We got another 7 for non-congregate sheltering, and then we got another 3 for schooling. And so we've got expenditures on how those have been handled behind this.
And it's behind us. So
Yes.
you got, okay.
The others are.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we're not done yet, but this is the current state of where we are
Okay.
on this one. So that 7 that was a guesstimate on the ground in Rolling Fork the day after the storm. Like, what are you going to need to be able to do that? So I think we're going to be pretty close. I do not believe we're going to go over it. I think it's going to well handle it, and it's sitting there in disaster trust for the next disaster if it opens up tomorrow. We'll be able to do that. So the non-congregate sheltering, this is one that is pretty significant. We've not done non-congregate sheltering since Katrina. and done a housing program since Katrina. So when you look at these numbers, we were given 8.2 was the initial obligation for the expenses so far. But if you flip to the next page, there were 763 people that did not have a place to live. We're now down to about 15. We had to house them in 47 hotels all over the state because there was not enough hotels within the impacted areas, and that's down to 5 as of today that we are actually housing in. So when you look for the total federal non-congregate sheltering on the left-hand side, 6 million. The total federal reimbursement received is 523 to us, and 5.8 million FEMA reimbursement projects in the queue for approval. So that is what we have submitted back into the system to be reimbursed for. But we had to get ahead of it and actually handle this with the vendors that we used.
Yes, that's the 75, the Fed share. On the right side is the state share.
So I just described the non-congregate survivors. We took care of them on that sheet. I'll jump over to the next one, March 24th. That storm, we received about, was it 6 or 7 million? So 3 million for the schools. We have not, and we anticipate buses. We've seen the shape that some of those buses were left in, but we don't have any request at this time. They're being worked at the FEMA level and the local school level. And once we get those numbers, we'll be able to invest back into those schools to be able to get the bus fleet and other things that they need for that recovery. But we don't have the request yet, but we know they're coming. They just have not made it out of FEMA. Yes, sir. The severe weather 14 through 20 June. This is where we actually, the storm, we convinced FEMA that this was a continuous, almost like California, that drought storm, that river, so to speak, and got the Weather Service to say it. So they said, okay, we'll give you the 14th to the 20th. Go ahead and see who else qualifies. We were able to pick up that storm that helped Jasper County, the individual assistance so much, and also down on the coast. So if you look on the left-hand side, that little small box, that's our current expenses. Stock that we had, the food, water, the distribution that went into that. The other needs assistance is at about 109,000 right now. And we're continuing to move forward. The next sheet real quick is the first time I've ever been able to work a disaster with the Forestry Commission. So that was that. I don't want one at all. I'm ready for a wetter summer, and maybe it can dry up out there. I've got work to do on my place. So I thought it was important to bring in this box on the right-hand side, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, our Mississippi folks that we mobilized, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. They have a similar system to EMAC, which we use. Forestry has another, they call it, it's a longer, fancier name. And, but it was pretty much basically the same. So we were able to bring in, we'd worked with the Forestry Commission for about 4 weeks straight, and they were falling off the shovels. So we'd be able to bring in these other teams that came in and did a fantastic job to knock out some of these fires. One close to my place down in Terry, Mississippi, almost burned a church as well. So that's just the cost of actually what took place and what we will be looking at reimbursing those other states which sent those assets to us.
Yeah, we will be requesting a deficit request for that money back. That's nothing that we'll be getting back from the feds, unfortunately.
That's crucial to remember that we have that compact. We usually are the people sending people
Yes.
over to Texas and out west. So.
Yes, sir.
And on this one, when you have a wildfire in your state, if the fire is still burning, when the federal response gets there, you can ask for a federal declaration. If what we were at, we were just in an oven cooking, but no fires on the ground at the time. So if it's not immediate life danger, if it's burning 5,000 acres of cotton, but nobody lives in that 5,000 acres, you're not getting a declaration on that side, on the fire. We've done a lot of homework and looking at that. So it's one of those, we had to station them here so we wouldn't have that problem. But if you'd have waited till it was a life safety problem, then you could have gotten a declaration, but then you probably would have lost lives. And that's not the place you want to be in. So the wildfire, they're currently, again, as you alluded to earlier, they're looking at the wildfire regulations differently now. I think after this last summer to possibly do some, I think, better changes. I'm not going to say good, better. The last page is ARPA and how we are able to use those funds. We are in a 2006 building, one of the most secure buildings I've been in besides Parchman, when I worked for the Department of Corrections. So it's a Pearl, it's a show place in Pearl, Mississippi, but this is a detailed layout of what we're using those funds for. You'll see some parking lot repair and some things there at the State Emergency Operations Center. And that's because we have a void in some of the concrete, and it's actually pulled away from the Miss Wind Tower for communications. It's moved about 6 to 8 inches down. So we're in some investigatory time. Why is that building happened to be sinking on the backside of my property? Not the SEOC proper, but that maintenance warehouse and other on the backside. So these are some projects. A chiller takes 365 days to order one and get it built to bring it back in. And ours is getting some heavy maintenance. We know the transmission's going out. We know it's coming. So to be able to do that, that could carry that for another 15 to 20 years. And so those are the major lifts that we're trying to do there.
If I may, sir, we are short, at this point in time, we are short, the 665,000 to finish all the projects, as they're budgeted at this point in time. The top part shows the initial ARPA appropriation that we were given, and then the bottom part will show the additional 2 million that was given to DFA for MEMA last year. Based upon the budgeting, we're working with, Bureau of Buildings to finish out the roofing, the chiller, the parking lot, and all the projects. We're 665,000 short. So that's the one ask that we have, is if we could get an appropriation for that to finish out our projects.
All right, if you would provide me a detail on these 3 items and where their overages were, and let me take a look at that.
Okay,
Yes,
we
sir.
will.
Is that, we have a very few short, less than 4 minutes left. You have anything else at this time?
Yes, sir. I'm ready for any questions.
Okay, any questions? You want to go ahead and ask yours?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and ask this. I've been doing it to everybody, so I'm gonna keep
Yes,
it
sir.
going. Your a little bit of progression money you got last year to try to offset some of the insurance costs. What was your plan on doing that? Did you go across the board, or did you have a different plan for implementation? Or
I didn't do across the board. I did performance.
you did performance?
I did
So yours was
performance evaluations. I took the employees that were, you've got some employees that are doing a job and a half because we're down, and you've got some that are only doing their job. So we looked at the year before, I tried to get to mid. But this last year, I went performance. It's a 3%, 5%, 7%, 10%, rewarding those star performers and making sure that we were investing in them so they would not leave the agency.
I appreciate that. We're just giving everybody a heads up.
Yes, sir.
To give us that before we request it, just so you can explain ahead of time before we call you afterwards. So
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Yeah, Director,
did.
we've asked that for everyone, and we're asking LBO to pull that information for us.
We did do every employee got a minimum of 3%, but if you got more, it was based upon your performance. Yes, sir. So every employee did get a bump. But if you got more than the 3% cost of living, it was based upon your performance.
On the head counts, we have you dropping 6 pins.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'll get with you and we'll work more into detail on that, and where those pins are, we'll go at that. I have a question about the Jackson water crisis and this particular slide that was given. Total obligation state expense for City of Jackson Water was 10.1 million.
Yes, sir.
You received 6.5 for funding on that. FEMA reimbursements of 2.3, and you're waiting for another 1.2. So that's what, 3.6 million total that the feds were going to was that that was not a disaster from a 75-25 perspective.
Yes, sir, it was. It was emergency measures declaration. It was like you do for a pre-hurricane to stage. It was not a major disaster. You're absolutely correct there. But this one was classified as an emergency measures declaration for life safety.
So if I'm looking at this, we had quite a bit of expenses that were not reimbursable
Correct.
under PA or.
So we do have more costs submitted to FEMA to evaluate. So that should change that amount, but we're not sure how far they're gonna go. We replaced some things that we knew would stop water from flowing, but we knew we weren't gonna reimburse for as well. So we had to make that call.
Okay.
Preventive maintenance on, like, say for one of the pumps we bought was $50,000. That's probably not gonna be reimbursable. But we had to get water flowing for the life safety, fire departments and other things. And that's where we figure we're gonna lose at.
Well, Director Clayton, you and I are going to work. I want to understand what these new changes that FEMA just announced a couple of weeks ago, what impact that's going to have. As you know, I've dealt with the agency long enough. I've always been concerned with O&A and the misuse or abuse of that by the general public. There are certainly some needs for that, but I am going to ask the question of how much is the state obligated to provide O&A with respect to the federal dollars that come down. I don't want to tie our hands and prevent us from pulling down or the money that we need, especially for PA. But some of that O&A is getting way out of hand. And over the years, I've just watched that number increase almost dramatically, complete non-linear than the rest of, or compared to the rest of the expenses.
Yes, sir.
So I'll just leave that with y'all. You know, I'll be working with you. If there's anything else, Corbin, Max, do you have anything? Anything? Thank you very much. I appreciate your.